Motor Week Illustrated is brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oil. The big Q is one tough motor oil.
Welcome to Motor Week Illustrated, Volume 8, number 39 for the week of Monday, October the 15th, 1990. Hello, everyone. I'm Dave Despain. Tonight on Motor Week Illustrated, the championships begin to fall in drag racing, and the expected controversy explodes over that IndyCar race in Japan.
And I'm Bob Varsha. There's been a major motorsports retirement announcement. We'll tell you about that. We'll also show you the wild weekend of action at the Sports Car Club of America National Runoffs. Jack Hewitt has a busy weekend in sprint and stock car racing. And Dave will take you to the International Figure 8 Championships.
We will begin with the first of three major drag racing titles decided yesterday. John Force, who survived a wild string of blower explosions to win 7 races this year, locked up the NHRA Funny Car title, making the semifinal yesterday at Texas Motorplex outside Dallas. He lost that semi to Mike Dunn. Dunn in the near lane actually helped John clinch by eliminating Ed McCulloch in the second round. The ace was the only other driver entertaining the hope of catching Force in the championship battle. Against 5th-ranked Jim White in the final, Dunn, hoping to lock down a season-long sponsor for next year, got a freebie. White made it about 100 feet under power, and Mike wins it easily. We take a look at the standings, which reflect world champion John the Brute Force's insurmountable lead. And we move on to pro stock. Remember when Darrell Alderman visited us 2 races ago? He was then 5th in the standings, but he convinced me he had a legitimate shot at the title. Well, 2 races later, Darrell is leading the points despite this final round loss to upstart Tony Christian. Tony took out defending world champ Bob Glidden en route to the final, and he won this one when Alderman's car sputtered at half-track. Big upset, but Alderman is thrilled with these standings. They show him leading the 5 drivers who still have a shot at the crown going into the series finale. Finally, in top fuel, Frank Hawley in the near lane against Eddie Hill. Point leader Joe Amato out to Kenny Bernstein in the second round. Defending world champ Gary Ormsby lost to Hill in the semi. Eddie lit him up in the final. The happiest man in Texas? Nope, not Frank Hawley. As a matter of fact, it was Darrell Gwynn who cheered his car to victory. Not quite the same as driving, but it's close. The points have Amato and Ormsby virtually neck and neck heading into the showdown at Pomona, and that one will be white knuckles.
As expected, plans to open the 1991 IndyCar season in Australia have kicked off another international turf war. The FISA, racing's worldwide governing body, announced last Tuesday it will not sanction the race, which means everyone from drivers to corner workers could face suspensions of their international licenses for life. On Wednesday, Australian officials insisted their race would go on, and Thursday, Indianapolis Motor Speedway weighed in with the announcement that the 500 will run with or without FISA sanction, and despite any ban resulting from the Australian flap. Now, the crux of this conflict is that CART wants to race overseas, but FISA views that as a threat to the Formula One World Championship. Last year, under similar FISA pressure, the Japanese canceled plans to hold the IndyCar season opener. For now, at least, the Australians are talking a better fight. Ironically, the same Paris meeting that withheld that sanction produced FISA's approval of a new oval racing world championship in 1992. Races will supposedly run in the U.S., Europe, Japan, and Australia.
We move on to offshore powerboat racing. Season came to a close over the weekend amidst a bevy of celebrities in the Florida Keys. Marathon Key, the port of call for a star-studded cast of racers, including former Miami Vice heartthrob Don Johnson and the Karate King Chuck Norris, who came in with a shot at the Superboat National Championship. The point leader, John Garrett. All he had to do was keep Norris in sight to clinch, but the engine blew. Once he heard Garrett was dropped out, Norris throttled back the engines of his 50-foot cat and coasted home the champion. Meanwhile, Johnson's team, USA, wailed away at an average speed of more than 95 miles an hour. He swept to his first offshore win since 1988 when he won the World Cup in these same waters. Last week we told you about the folding of Chip Hanauer's 1990 championship winning Circus Hotel Unlimited hydroplane team. On Wednesday, the newly crowned champ retired from the sport. Following the death of hydro legend Bill Munsey in '81, Hanauer took over Bill's Atlas Van Lines boat, later changed to Miller Beer livery. In every year since, he's won either the APBA Gold Cup, the Unlimited National Championship, or both, and his feat spanned the evolution from piston engines to turbine power. Second only to Munsey in career victories with 36, Hanauer says he may go to the broadcast booth, head for graduate school, or try racing on dry land.
An Italian court has opened an investigation into the helicopter crash last Friday that severed the right arm of Formula One driver Alessandro Nannini. The 31-year-old Italian's left hand was also crushed in the accident, in which the pilot and 2 other passengers were also injured. It's not clear whether Nannini or the pilot was at the controls of the helicopter when it crashed near his parents' home in central Italy. Nannini is in satisfactory condition after 9 hours of surgery to reattach his arm. Doctors say his racing career is likely over, though they won't know whether the arm can be saved for at least a week. In other Formula One news, Nannini's former Benetton teammate, Englishman Johnny Herbert, has been named to replace the injured Martin Donnelly with Team Lotus for the rest of the season. Donnelly continues to improve in a London hospital following his vicious wreck at the Spanish Grand Prix 2 weeks ago.
Any doubts that A.J. Foyt would come through the leg injuries he suffered at Road America a few weeks back with his spirits intact were dispelled last week by the man himself. On Tuesday at Methodist Hospital, Super Tex and his doctors met the press. The question was not whether he would return to the cockpit, but when.
Well, the doctor has to answer that, and I'm following his orders pretty good, and we're going to work hard at it. And he's saying 6 months. 6 to 7 months. I'm saying 5 months.
While A.J. recovers, his car will be placed in the hands of Belgian Didier Tays with no strings attached.
I look for him to do real good out in California. And like I told him, I said, look, don't worry about the car. I don't care how fast you run or where you finish. You wreck it, you wreck it. I'm not mad. I'm not telling you go out and try to win the race. If you miss the show, you miss the show. I said, I know you won't do it. I know you're going to run good in it. But I want you to drive the car for you, not for A.J. Foyt, not for Chevrolet Usabaka. You drive it where you feel safe.
Welcome back, Tex. When we come back, we'll take a swing through the stock car world.
In this era of big-time sports event sponsorship, it was only a matter of time. Last Tuesday, officials at Daytona International Speedway announced that next year's Daytona 500 will be sponsored by STP. The race also marks the beginning of the company's 20th year of association with 7-time 500 winner Richard Petty. The 500 was the only event on the Winston Cup calendar not carrying the name of a sponsor in its title.
When the Busch Grand National Stock Car Division christened the New Hampshire International Speedway back in the spring, it was a crash-marred affair, lots of yellows. Yesterday, the Grand National guys were back, and so was the yellow. First big crash of the day took out Steve Grissom and Tommy Houston. Bobby Labonte in red, who got upside down here in the spring, was dinged but not stopped. Lots of damage, nobody hurt. 75 laps in, the pole sitter Ricky Craven gets loose. Dave Mader jumps under him to inherit the lead. The series leader, Chuck Bound, next in trouble. A broken water pump puts him 13 laps behind, drowns his hopes of clinching the title. Not giving up, Bound wrestles with Mader for a chunk of pavement. Mader fishtails, then loops and takes the unfortunate Joe Bessie and Tommy Ellis with him. Wrong place, wrong time. Rookie Charger Joe Nemechek, well, Joe ran as high as third, but for the second race in a row, got the back end in front of the front end. He dropped her in gear and kept right on going. And we'll move on to one more guy who has a problem here. Jimmy Hensley, nursing a slim hope of catching Bound in the title chase, has to hold up the window net to avoid the black flag. So did anybody have a trouble-free day? Well, yeah, one guy did. Rick Mast held off young Labonte for his third win of the year.
Bobby had me just a little bit worried. He made a run at me. We got some lap traffic. I went ahead and ran my car hard for 3 or 4 laps and kind of got away from him. And then I kind of thought, well, if nothing breaks, maybe I got it in the bag now.
And Mike McLaughlin, the Grand National regular, along with Craven, ran 3rd and 4th. Ellis came back from his crash to finish 5th. Hensley ran 12th, gained 36 points on Bound, but Chuck can clinch the title by running 23rd or better in the last 2 races.
Meanwhile, out west, another NASCAR points battle is raging. On Saturday night, Mike Chase survived an early crash to win the Southwest Tour stop at California's Mesa Marin Raceway. On Sunday, he came back for the next-to-last Winston West race, looking for a sweep. 4 drivers came into this 400-lapper at Mesa Marin with a shot at the Winston West Championship. Things tightened up when Terry Fisher, 3rd in points, failed to start, and Tour leader Bill Sedgwick broke a crankshaft just 4 laps in. That left it to 23 Chase, newly crowned Rookie of the Year and 4th in points, and the 73 of defending Tour champ and points runner-up Bill Smith. The two passed the lead back and forth 5 times in the final 160 laps before Chase pulled away to win. The results leave Sedgwick, Schmidt, and Chase just a handful of points apart going into the season finale at Phoenix in 2 weeks.
A key figure during the coming of age of stock car racing passed away last week. In the early 70s, North Carolina businessman L.G. DeWitt sponsored a racer from his hometown of Ellerbe. He'd heard that driver, Benny Parsons, had what it took to win. Sure enough, the local hero won the Winston Cup Championship. In addition to 8 years as a car owner, DeWitt bought major shares of North Carolina Motor Speedway in Rockingham and Atlanta International Raceway. Earlier this year, DeWitt and AIR co-owner Walter Nix sold that track to Charlotte Motor Speedway owner Bruton Smith for $20 million. Hailed as a true Southern gentleman and stock car pioneer, L.G. DeWitt died Tuesday night at the age of 78. For the weekend warriors of the Sports Car Club of America, the Valvoline Runoffs are the payoff for a whole season of racing effort. National champions crowned in every imaginable kind of race car, and Steve Michaels took a shot at covering them all.
Well over 600 drivers from around North America came here to Road Atlanta to battle for 22 national championships at the 27th annual Valvoline Runoffs. Now is the time to turn your VCRs on. We've got some great racing action. Let's begin with the GT4 race. GT4 pole sitter and defending champ Don Erb chases Floridian Eric Van Cleef and shows a classic way not to try to pass, hitting Van Cleef going straight on and plowing into the wall, sending tires like shrapnel, hitting Motor Week cameraman Bob Kramer, who keeps on shooting. Another look at the incident shows the force of Erb's hit, causing him to go straight into the tire wall, flipping over on his roof. Don was pulled out and was all right. Richard Grant picks up the lead, but despite a battered car, Van Cleef battles back from the rear of the pack and challenges Grant for the win on the final lap. At the bridge, with one turn left, Van Cleef goes side by side but can't hold it, and Grant goes on to his first SCCA title. Van Cleef finished third, but thought he could have won.
Richard was using every piece of pavement, and it was all I could do to keep from hitting him under the bridge. He runs strong, but I would have had him beat if he would have given me just a patch. I would have been by him in a flash.
Always spectacular and entertaining to the fans. The Formula V race didn't disappoint as 38 drivers went hard into turn one, and again chaos. Don Pepperdine gets onto the grass and spins and waits to be swallowed up by the rest of the pack as 7 cars get involved in the incident. Pole sitter Stephen Davis led the pack most of the way, setting up a 4-car train with former champs George Feisel and Bill Noble, along with California's Skip Streets, trading positions for second. While at the bridge, it was Streets and Davis going wide, trying to hold each other off, while defending champ Bill Noble moves up from third to sneak through on the inside to take his third Formula V title. Bill, now you've actually retired and you've come back. You've won 2 in a row. What are your plans for 91?
Well, I'm going to be back racing Formula Vs. I love it. I build a lot of engines, and I have a lot of good friends doing it, and that's a game for me. I'm not going to be another Mario Andretti. You know, I'm not going to be another superstar, but I have a lot of fun with what I'm doing.
Other winners on Friday were Dave Headley in Showroom Stock B, Randy Cranfield in H Production, Michael Galati in Showroom Stock C, Wiley Timbrook in Showroom Stock A, Jeffrey Clinton in GT5, and Ken Prather in G Production. On Saturday, 32 drivers started the Showroom Stock GT race, and right away, defending champ Boris Said was going to make sure that the battle wasn't for first as he immediately pulled out to a healthy margin in his BFG Camaro. Drivers kept up the pace using their cars to the fullest, with some running out of luck, including Brian Simo of Carlsbad, California, who spins under the bridge and backs up into the tire wall. Brian not only gets out quickly, but bows to the crowd, who gives them a standing ovation. For race winner Boris Said it was almost a walk in the park. Almost.
Luckily, these cars are so reliable and fun to drive. It's just a breeze.
Other race winners on Saturday were Don Walker in GT3, Craig Taylor in Formula Continental, Michael Rupert in D Sports Racer, Paul Elliott in Formula 440, Bob Boyd in F Production, Joe Hamilton in Formula Atlantic, and Matt Minch in GT2. On Sunday, the large crowd eagerly awaited the SCCA's most powerful class, the GT1s. Pole sitter Steve Petty in his Chevy Camaro got snookered at the start as Flip Groggins in the Buick Regal Turbo outdragged him into turn one. Petty turned up the wick on the 3rd lap, pulled into the lead, and held off Groggins, winning by less than 2 seconds at the end.
I was nervous the whole time. I went off a couple times. Thought it was pretty scary, and I had a little contact with another guy. I might have been a little over anxious, but it all came together.
Other Sunday class winners included Jack Wheeler in E Production, Jay Hill in Sports 2000, Tom Kester in Formula Ford, Chuck Billington in C Sports Racer, and Kyle Konzer in Spec Racer. I'm Steve Michael reporting for Motor Week Illustrated.
Organizing that event is a massive undertaking for Road Atlanta, but all 22 classes stayed right on schedule, and the track had perfect weather to boot. Our U.S. Air Force Reserve Commander's Performance Award goes to the staff and management of Road A. Congratulations from the 434th Aerial Refueling Wing, Grissom Air Force Base in Indiana.
The hot rumor in the pit lane at the runoffs this weekend was that the SCCA's premier pro division, the Trans Am, has landed a multi-year sponsorship with Procter & Gamble's Tide detergent brand. The new deal is expected to add at least $500,000 to prize and point fund monies. Expect an announcement on Wednesday.
And expect us back with desert racing and sprint cars right after this. Just a week after Steve Kinzer wrapped up his 10th World of Outlaw Sprint Car Championship, Doug Wolfgang finally got the best of him. The Wolf won his 100th Outlaw feature at Hagerstown, Maryland over the weekend, past Kinzer with a lap and a half to go. Meanwhile, the all-star sprinters looked spiffy till they went to the throttle and things got messy in a hurry. Heat race action, Bloomington, Indiana. Turn 1, cars tangle. Kevin Huntley goes up, but not quite over. Gravity's a wonderful thing sometimes. Now watch the night's big hero, Jack Hewitt in white. Gets into turn 3 pretty hot, hooks up in turn 4 and kind of clunks Greg Hodnett. Greg able to continue, but Hewitt bent up the car and had to go to the C main. There he and others all chased the 1S of Lee Brewer, who used all of the racetrack and a little bit more. Great save here, but he cut a tire in the process, and so he was out of there. Hewitt won the C main, got the transfer to the B, started 8th in the A, ran down the yellow 39 of Rick Hood, and won the race.
It got faster, you know, at the end, and the guys that tightened their car up, I'm sure, was a little bit tight at the end, and we were pretty nice. We were loose enough we could still run the lap traffic, and we was hooked up enough we could still drive off the bottom.
24 hours later, Rossburg, Ohio, watch Hewitt, bottom of the racetrack, a daring last lap pass to win his heat race and qualify for the final All-Star Point Payer of the Year. He is on Hood's tail again in a rematch of the Friday night battle. But check out this turn 3, Brody. You cannot back her in any closer to the fence without hitting it than this right here. No contact. The scramble continues. Jack, the guy the fans watched all night, here he goes the long way around, takes over second spot in the feature, but his hopes for a sweep went south on a late race restart. The car wouldn't turn. He hit the fence at both ends of the racetrack. Give the hard-driving E for effort to Hewitt, but let the record show that Rick Hood, who also used up a fair bit of real estate here, won the All-Star Sprint point-paying finale at Eldora Speedway. But hey, Hewitt's not finished. Jumped in his number 21 late model and wrapped up the Ohio doubleheader. Took it to the top of the racetrack here, too. Avoided a late race tangle among the lappers and claimed his second main event victory in 24 hours. I think that guy deserves something more than a pat on the back for giving the All-Star Circuit fans a weekend to remember. Sprint car and late model star Jack Hewitt is Motor Week Illustrated Racer of the Week.
In motocross, Jeff Ward successfully defended his 500cc national championship in a rain-soaked series finale at Unadilla, New York yesterday. The often injured Rick Johnson won the race with second and first place moto finishes, then announced he probably won't race at all next year. And Guy Cooper claimed the 125 title with a come-from-behind ride in the second moto. Elsewhere, a two-truck collision in the middle of the Nevada desert highlighted
over the weekend was the on the 1990. Only the bottom month remains, but the Gold Coast will be remembered as the race where most of this year's important championships were sewed up. Ivan Stewart took another overall victory, continuing a near-perfect string of finishes for him this year. That clinched his class title and the overall series points championship. He's also already won the stadium off-road title this year, a double no one's ever achieved in the same year before. In the big pickups, Ivan's old stadium teammate Robbie Gordon has had an uphill battle all year trying to win that championship. The man he's been trying to catch, ironically, has been Ivan's son, Brian Stewart. Robbie was pressing hard, trying to catch up to Ivan for the overall win in this race and overtake Brian in the championship points. Brian, meanwhile, fell from contention with mechanical problems, but he still managed to get in Robbie's way for the overall win. Stewart pulled out in front of Robbie, and they collided. Gordon's Ford, less than a mile from the finish at the time, suffered major damage.
Me and Brian Stewart unfortunately got together. I don't know if he knew I was there or not. You know, I was running flat out down the silt bed, and he was standing still. All of a sudden, he pulled out in front of me, so I tried locking up the brakes and avoiding him. We just barely clipped him, and it was enough to break the steering box.
Stewart said it was unintentional, just an accident. Gordon was able to make repairs and limp on into the finish. For the second race this year, he's had problems in the final mile. Despite all that, Gordon earned enough points to pretty much wrap up the truck title for this year. Reporting from Jean, Nevada, this is Jerry Garrett.
And you stay tuned. We'll have the International Figure 8 Championship when we come back. Finally, the International Motorsports Championship event that focused the attention of the entire racing world on Charlestown, Indiana last weekend. That's right, Charlestown, Indiana, where Charlestown Speedway promoter Clark Nichols was ready for action.
Figure eight's unique. It's one of the most unique sports that I know of, and it takes a lot of talent to run these cars, and it's just exciting for the fans. This is the grand finale of the modified figure eight racing in our area. They run the World Championship at the Speedrome in Indianapolis, and we run the International Figure Eight Championship.
Ah, yes, the International Championship, which drew 40 drivers actually from 4 states. But let's not quibble over semantics. They were all highly motivated.
I don't know. There's just a little more thrill there, I think. A lot of tracks around there's a little more money in figure eight racing than oval racing, so I guess that's where I need to be right now.
You're right about the money, Bruce. This thing pays $8,000, winner take all. And this, without a doubt, is the highlight of the late summer social season in Charlestown. Everybody who was anybody was there, and they were awarded with 270 laps, 3 90-lap heats of Meet Me in the Middle modified stock car action. Now, in the first few laps of the race, the field really only needs half the track, so that intersection is no big deal. But once the traffic gets strung out the entire length of the figure eight, then things get a little more tricky. Timing and technique at the crossover become the name of the game. We're going to compare a few different approaches. Fast guys don't worry very much about the oncoming cars, and they blow right by the timid guys who choose to wait for an opening in the traffic. Here's a timid guy who turned out to be a smart guy. Waited a reasonable length of time, decided what the heck, hung a left, and avoided the problem completely. Meanwhile, the fast guys are already coming around again. Look out. You know what's going to happen. Boom. Dwayne Lee learns the hard. Timid is better. These cars make about 400 horsepower, so the constant near misses take place at pretty good speed. Watch this. Hello there. Naturally, with all the attention focused on the middle of the 8, the real action is all taking place somewhere else on the racetrack. Approaching the crossover, you can stop or you can go. You cannot stop in the middle. That causes problems. Getting down to decision time at the wheel of the 71, Bruce Tunney, you met him earlier. You've also seen Dwayne Lee in action once before. Are we going to run 270 laps like this and never see a big T-bone crash? Of course not. There it is. Cameraman Chris Crone, though, burned up 4 tapes on that junction before he finally got a good one. On his third try, Bruce Tunney takes the checkers and the check for $8 grand. Bruce shoots the crossroads one last time and then tells us big victory.
Well, the first race we got knocked out a little bit and ended up finishing 6th, and we turned it around, come back out, and we won one. So that last race we throwed some new tires on, and that done the trick.
I did indeed, and from all of us at Motor Week, congratulations to the International Modified champion, Bruce Tunney of Indianapolis. Unfortunately, Bruce, you've run us fresh out of time. We got to go. He's Bob Varsha. I'm Dave Despain with you.